It was January 17th, 2026 at 2:47 a.m. when a dream so vivid and terrifying drove me from my bed to the isolated lakeside 2 miles from my home, and there, surrounded by water so still it looked like polished obsidian, with mist rising in ghostly columns that caught the pre-dawn darkness and transformed it into something between this world and the next, Jesus stood at the water's edge. That shocking revelation about February 2026, a prophecy so specific, so imminent, so earth-shattering that my hands are still trembling as I share this with you now. Not everyone who sees this message is meant to see it. Some will scroll past, some will ignore it. But you've been marked. I know how that sounds. Believe me, I know. But before you dismiss this, before you scroll away thinking this is just another actor from a TV show trying to get attention, I need you to understand something. I didn't ask for this. I didn't want this. I was sleeping peacefully when the dream came, when he came, and the urgency in his voice, the grief in his eyes, the way he spoke my name. It wasn't a request. It was a summons. So I got dressed in the dark, my wife still sleeping, and I drove through empty streets to this place I'd never been before but somehow knew exactly how to find. The temperature was 34 degrees, I remember, because I could see my breath, and later I would see his. The lake stretched out before me, maybe half a mile across, surrounded by pine trees that stood like silent witnesses, their branches occasionally creaking in the pre-dawn stillness. There was no wind, not at first, just that supernatural quiet that makes you feel like you've stepped outside of time itself. I want you to do something for me right now. I want you to leave your prayer requests in the comments below. Whatever you're facing, financial crisis, health issues, broken relationships, addiction, fear about the future, write it down. Because what Jesus revealed to me at this lakeside isn't just about February 2026. It's about you. It's about whether you're going to be ready for what's coming. And please, if you consider yourself a true believer, if you want to be part of a community that isn't afraid to hear the real, unfiltered words of Jesus, not the sanitized, comfortable version the modern church sells you, then subscribe to this channel right now. Hit that notification bell. Because what I'm about to share over these next few nights is going to challenge everything you think you know about prophecy, about preparation, about what it really means to follow Christ in these final moments before February 2026. Some of you know me from The Chosen. You've watched me portray Jesus for years now, and I want to be clear. That's acting. That's a script written by talented people trying their best to honor the Gospels. But what happened at this lakeside wasn't acting. There was no script, no director, no cameras. Just me, the mist, the water, and him. The mist was getting thicker as I stood there on the rocky shore, my boots crunching on the frost-covered pebbles. I could hear the water lapping gently against the rocks, a rhythmic, almost hypnotic sound. Somewhere across the lake, a loon called out, its cry echoing across the water, mournful and ancient. The sky was still dark, but there was that quality to the darkness that tells you dawn is coming, that subtle shift from black to the deepest blue. I didn't know why I was there, not yet. I just knew I had to be, and then I saw him. He didn't appear in a flash of light. He didn't descend from the clouds. One moment I was alone, staring out at the mist-covered water, and the next moment he was standing 20 feet to my left, also facing the lake, his profile illuminated by a light source I couldn't identify. The mist seemed to move around him differently, as if it recognized him, as if it was bowing. "Jonathan," he said, and his voice carried across the space between us with perfect clarity, despite being barely above a whisper. I couldn't speak. My throat had closed up. All I could do was stare. He turned to face me fully, and I saw his eyes, those eyes I'd tried to imagine and portray for years, and they were filled with such profound sorrow that I felt my knees weaken. But there was something else there too. Urgency. Fierce, burning urgency. "Do you know why you're here?" he asked. I shook my head, still unable to find words. "Because time is shorter than anyone realizes," he said, taking a step toward me. "Because February 2026 is not just another month. It's a threshold, a crossing point, and my people, my own people, are asleep." The way he said asleep made the word sound like a tragedy. He gestured toward the lake, and as he did, the mist began to move, swirling and forming shapes. "Look at the water, Jonathan. What do you see?" It's still," I managed to say. "Calm." "Yes," he said, and there was such weight in that single word. Calm, peaceful, undisturbed. This is how my church sees the world right now. This is how they see February 2026. Just another month, just another season, just another year rolling forward like all the others. He raised his hand, and suddenly the water began to churn. Not everywhere, just in one spot, about 50 yards from shore. The mist above that spot darkened, and I could hear a sound like distant thunder. But underneath the surface, Jesus continued, his voice rising, underneath the appearance of peace, something is building, something is coming, and those who are not prepared, those who are not watching, those who have convinced themselves that prophecy is symbolic or distant or irrelevant, they will be caught completely unaware. The churning water was getting more violent. I could see it clearly now despite the darkness, a whirlpool forming, pulling the mist down into itself. "What happens in February?" I asked, my voice cracking. "What's coming?" He turned back to me, and a single tear ran down his cheek. I saw it catch the strange light, saw it trace a path down his face. "A shaking," he said. "Not just physical, though there will be physical manifestations, but a shaking of everything that can be shaken. Systems that seem stable will reveal their instability. Institutions that seem permanent will show their cracks. People who seem strong will discover they built their lives on sand." The temperature dropped suddenly. I could feel it, a plunge of at least 10 degrees in a matter of seconds. My breath came out in thick clouds now. The trees around us began to creak and groan as a wind picked up from nowhere, rushing across the lake's surface, turning the once still water into a field of small waves that caught what little light there was and threw it back in fractured patterns. "I've been warning," Jesus said, and his voice carried both grief and frustration, through dreams, through signs, through the groaning of creation itself. But the church has become expert at explaining away my warnings. "That's just weather," they say. "That's just politics. That's just the normal cycle of history." They've forgotten how to watch. They've forgotten how to read the signs. He walked closer to me, close enough that I could have reached out and touched him, close enough that I could see the texture of his robe, could smell something like myrrh and cedar, could feel the weight of his presence pressing against me like a physical force. "You're going to tell them," he said. It wasn't a question. I don't know if they'll listen," I said. "I'm just an actor. I'm not a prophet. I'm not a pastor. "You're someone who has spoken my words to millions," he interrupted. "You've portrayed me. You've studied me. You've tried to understand my heart. And now I'm giving you a chance to do more than portray. I'm giving you a chance to proclaim." The whirlpool in the lake was massive now, and as I watched, I saw images forming in the water and mist. I saw cities. I recognized New York, Los Angeles, Chicago. I saw crowds of people going about their normal lives completely oblivious. I saw churches with their lights on, worship teams playing, people raising their hands in praise. But there was something hollow about it, something performative. "They worship me with their lips," Jesus said, echoing Isaiah, "but their hearts are far from me. They sing about surrender but clutch their comforts. They preach about faith but trust in their bank accounts. They talk about my return but live as if they have endless time." The images in the water shifted. Now I saw chaos, not clearly enough to identify specific events, but the feeling was unmistakable. Panic, confusion, people running, systems failing, the comfortable, predictable world coming apart. "February 2026, he said again. "Mark it, remember it, prepare for it." "But prepare how?" I asked desperately. "What are people supposed to do?" He smiled then, but it was a sad smile. "That's what I'm going to show you," he said. "Over these next 3 nights, I'm going to reveal what true preparation looks like. Not stockpiling food, though wisdom is never wrong. Not building bunkers, though there's nothing wrong with prudence. But preparing your heart, preparing your spirit, preparing your faith for a test that most of my people don't even know is coming." The wind was howling now, whipping the mist into frenzied patterns. The trees were bending, their branches thrashing. But around Jesus, there was perfect stillness. The wind didn't touch him, the mist didn't obscure him. "I'm going to show you what's at stake," he continued. "I'm going to show you who will stand and who will fall. I'm going to show you the difference between those who know me and those who merely know about me. And then you're going to tell them, all of them, everyone who will listen." He reached out and placed his hand on my shoulder, and the warmth that flooded through me was indescribable. It was like every cold, fearful, uncertain part of me was suddenly filled with liquid light. "The church thinks they're ready," he said softly. They think their Sunday services and their small groups and their Bible studies have prepared them. But I'm about to reveal what's really in their hearts. February 2026 is when the revealing begins. Will it be the end? I asked. It will be an end, he said. The end of pretending, the end of playing church, the end of comfortable Christianity. But for those who are truly mine, for those who have built their lives on the rock of genuine faith and obedience, it will be a beginning, a refining, a purification that will hurt but will produce something beautiful. The images in the water were fading now, the whirlpool slowing. The wind began to die down. The mist started to settle back into its gentle rising columns. Tomorrow night, Jesus said, stepping back, meet me here again, same time. I have more to show you. Much more. Wait, I said, suddenly desperate not to let him go. How do I know this is real? How do I know I'm not just imagining this? How do I convince people? He looked at me with such compassion. You don't convince anyone, Jonathan. You testify. You tell what you've seen and heard. Some will receive it, many won't. But that's not your responsibility. Your responsibility is to be faithful to deliver the message. He turned back toward the lake, and as he did, the first rays of dawn broke over the eastern horizon. The light hit the water, turning it from black to silver to gold in a matter of seconds. The mist caught the light and became luminous, ethereal, breathtakingly beautiful. Look at this, Jesus said, gesturing at the sunrise. Every morning, creation testifies to my faithfulness. Every dawn is a promise kept. But how many people see it? How many people stop and really look and remember that I am the light of the world, that I am faithful, that I keep my promises, all of them, including the difficult ones? The light was growing stronger, and as it did, his form began to fade, becoming translucent, merging with the light itself. Tomorrow night, he said again, his voice now seeming to come from everywhere and nowhere. Be here, be ready. What I show you next will be harder, but you need to see it. They need to hear it. And then he was gone. I stood there as the sun continued to rise, as the mist began to burn off, as the lake transformed from a mysterious, otherworldly place into just a lake, beautiful but ordinary. My legs were shaking, my whole body was trembling, and not from the cold. I looked at my phone. It was 4:23 a.m. I'd been at the lakeside for over an hour and a half, though it had felt like both minutes and hours simultaneously. Listen to me. I know some of you are skeptical. I know some of you think I've lost my mind, or that I'm making this up for views or attention. But I'm telling you, I'm begging you, don't dismiss this. Something is coming in February 2026. Something significant. Something that will separate the wheat from the chaff, the genuine from the counterfeit, those who truly know Jesus from those who just know the right Christian words. Tomorrow night, I'm going back to that lakeside. I'm going to hear what else he has to say. And tomorrow, I'm going to share it with you. But right now, today, I want you to do something. I want you to ask yourself, if everything comfortable and predictable in your life was suddenly stripped away, would your faith survive? If your church closed, if your Christian friends disappeared, if your Bible was taken, if you had nothing but you and Jesus, would that be enough? Because that's the question February 2026 is going to answer for millions of people. Drop a comment below. Tell me you're watching. Tell me you're listening. Tell me you're willing to hear the hard truth instead of the comfortable lie, and share your prayer requests, because we're going to need to be praying for each other in the days ahead. Tomorrow night, I'll tell you what Jesus showed me on the second night at the lakeside, and I'm warning you now, it's going to challenge everything you think you know about being ready. The sun is fully up now as I record this. The lake looks peaceful again, normal, but I know what I saw beneath that surface. I know what's coming. The question is, do you want to know too? I couldn't eat all day. Every time I tried, I'd remember the look in his eyes, that mixture of sorrow and urgency, and my stomach would clench. My wife knew something had happened. She didn't press me, but I could feel her watching me throughout the day, concern etched on her face. How do you explain to someone that you met Jesus at a lakeside? That he gave you a prophecy about February 2026, that you have to go back tonight? I tried to work. I had emails to answer, scripts to review, a Zoom call with the production team, but I couldn't focus. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that whirlpool in the water, those images of chaos forming in the mist. I heard his voice saying, February 2026, mark it, remember it, prepare for it. The comments on yesterday's video were mixed. Some people got it. They felt the urgency. They shared their own sense that something is coming, that the Spirit has been warning them too. But others, so many others, were angry. False prophet, they called me. Attention seeker. Stick to acting. One comment that particularly stung said, "You're using Jesus' name to scare people. That's blasphemy." Maybe they're right to be skeptical. Maybe I would be too, if I were watching instead of living this. But I know what I experienced, and tonight I was about to experience more. It was January 18th, 2026, at 2:47 a.m. exactly, the same time as the night before, when I pulled up to the lakeside again. I'd set 3 alarms, but I didn't need them. I'd barely slept, and when I did, I dreamed of water and mist and his face. The temperature had dropped even further, 28 degrees according to my car's dashboard. As I stepped out, the cold hit me like a physical blow, sharp and biting. My breath came out in thick plumes. The sky was clearer tonight. I could see stars, thousands of them reflected perfectly in the lake's still surface. It was as if there were 2 skies, one above and one below, and I was standing in the thin space between them. The mist was there again, but different, thicker, more purposeful in its movements. It didn't just rise randomly. It seemed to flow in patterns, like it was being choreographed by an invisible hand. I walked to the same spot where I'd stood the night before, the frost-covered pebbles crunching under my boots. The sound seemed impossibly loud in the pre-dawn silence. The loon called again from across the water, the same mournful cry. Or maybe it was a different loon. Maybe they all sound like that, like they're grieving something. I didn't have to wait long. "You came back," his voice said from behind me this time. I spun around, and there he was, standing at the edge of the tree line. He looked more solid tonight, more present. The starlight seemed to gather around him, making him visible even in the darkness. "Of course I came back," I said, my voice shaking slightly. "You told me to." He walked toward me, his feet making no sound on the rocks. "Many people hear my voice," he said. "Few obey it, especially when obedience is uncomfortable, especially when it means looking foolish to others." He knew about the comments. Of course he knew. "They think I'm crazy," I said, "or lying, or deceived." "Yes," he said simply. "They thought the same about Noah, about Jeremiah, about John the Baptist, about me." He paused, looking out at the water. "The question isn't whether people believe you, Jonathan. The question is whether you believe me enough to keep speaking even when they don't." I nodded, not trusting my voice. "Tonight," he said, his tone shifting to something more intense, "I'm going to show you why February 2026 matters. I'm going to show you what I'm separating, what I'm exposing, what I'm bringing to light, and it's going to be harder to watch than last night." He raised his hand toward the lake, and immediately the water began to change, but this time it wasn't churning. Instead, the surface became like glass, smoother than glass actually, like a perfect mirror. And in that mirror, images began to form with crystal clarity. "Look," he said. "See what I see when I look at my church." The first image was of a massive church building, modern and impressive, with professional lighting and a stage that looked like a concert venue. The worship team was playing, and the music was beautiful, technically perfect, emotionally stirring. The congregation had their hands raised, many with tears streaming down their faces. "What do you see wrong with this?" I asked. "They're worshiping you." "Are they?" he asked quietly. "Watch closer." The image zoomed in on individual faces, and as I looked, really looked, I began to see it. The worship leader was thinking about the record deal he was negotiating. The woman in the third row was mentally rehearsing an argument with her husband. The man near the back was calculating whether he could leave early to catch the game. The teenager was wondering if her ex-boyfriend was watching her Instagram story. "Their mouths sing to me," Jesus said, "but their minds are 1,000 miles away. They've learned to perform worship. They've mastered the external expressions. But their hearts?" He shook his head. "Their hearts are chasing the same things the world chases: comfort, recognition, pleasure, security." The image shifted to a different church, smaller, more traditional. A pastor was preaching passionately about faith and sacrifice. The congregation was nodding, saying "Amen," taking notes. "And this one?" I asked. Watch what happens when they leave, he said. The image fast-forwarded. The service ended. People filed out, shaking the pastor's hand, complimenting the sermon. Then it showed them in their cars, in their homes, living their lives. And there was no difference, no discernible difference between how they lived and how their non-Christian neighbors lived. Same entertainment choices, same financial priorities, same relationship patterns, same anxiety levels, same everything. They hear my word, Jesus said, and his voice was heavy with grief, but they don't do it. They're like someone who looks in a mirror, sees their face, and immediately forgets what they look like. The word goes in their ears and out their mouths in the form of religious conversation, but it never penetrates their hearts, never transforms their choices, never actually changes anything. The wind was picking up now, coming across the lake in gusts that made the pine trees sway and creak. The temperature seemed to drop another few degrees. I pulled my jacket tighter. In February 2026, he continued, the mirror is going to shatter. The comfortable illusion that these people are my disciples is going to be exposed, and many, so many, are going to discover they don't actually know me at all. But they go to church, I protested. They read their Bibles. They pray. Do they? He interrupted, turning to face me directly. Or do they go through motions? Jonathan, I'm not impressed by religious activity. I never have been. The Pharisees had more religious activity than anyone, and I called them whitewashed tombs, beautiful on the outside, full of death on the inside. The images in the water were multiplying now, dozens of them, hundreds, like windows into churches all across America, all across the world. And in each one I saw the same thing, the gap between appearance and reality, between profession and practice, between what people claimed to believe and how they actually lived. Show me the ones who are real, I said, almost desperately. Show me the ones who truly follow you. The images shifted. Now I saw a woman praying in her kitchen at dawn, tears on her face, interceding for her prodigal son. I saw a man choosing to forgive a business partner who had betrayed him, even though it cost him financially. I saw a teenager standing alone at her school, refusing to join in gossip, willing to be excluded rather than compromise. I saw a couple opening their home to a homeless family, disrupting their comfortable life to serve. These images were different, quieter, less impressive externally. But there was something in these people's faces, a light, a peace, a authenticity that was unmistakable. These are mine, Jesus said, and his voice was filled with such love. These are the ones who have counted the cost and paid it. These are the ones who will stand in February 2026, not because they're perfect, but because they're real. Because their faith isn't a Sunday costume they put on, it's the foundation of their entire lives. How many? I asked. How many are real versus how many are just playing church? He looked at me with those penetrating eyes. Do you really want to know? I wasn't sure I did, but I nodded. In many churches, he said slowly, the ratio is the same as it was when I walked the earth. Many are called, few are chosen, many hear, few obey, many claim to know me, few actually do. The water showed me a large church again, maybe 2,000 people in the congregation. Then, like a filter being applied, most of the people faded to gray, becoming translucent, ghost-like. Only a scattered few remained in full color, maybe 1 in 10, maybe fewer. These are the ones who will remain when the shaking comes, he said. These are the ones whose faith is built on rock, not sand. The others? He gestured at the gray figures. They think they're saved. They think they're secure. They've prayed a prayer, walked an aisle, been baptized, joined a church. But they've never truly surrendered. They've never truly died to themselves. They've never truly made me Lord, not just Savior, but Lord. I felt sick. Are you saying most people in church aren't actually saved? I'm saying most people in church have never been told what salvation actually costs, he replied. They've been sold a cheap grace that requires nothing and produces nothing. They've been told that believing in me is like believing in gravity, just intellectual assent to a fact. But James said even demons believe and they tremble. Belief without transformation isn't faith, it's just information. The images were becoming more intense now. I saw what looked like a storm coming, dark clouds gathering on the horizon of the lake, lightning flickering in the distance. The wind was stronger, whipping the mist into frenzied spirals. February 2026, he said again, his voice rising above the wind, is when the storm makes landfall, It's when the foundations are tested. It's when everyone discovers what they really built their life on. What kind of storm? I asked, almost shouting now to be heard. What's actually going to happen? He turned back to the water, and the images shifted again. This time, I saw economic chaos, banks failing, markets crashing, people panicking. I saw political upheaval, governments in crisis, leaders falling, systems collapsing. I saw natural disasters, earthquakes, floods, fires. But more than any of that, I saw spiritual crisis. I saw churches splitting apart as people turned on each other. I saw pastors abandoning their pulpits. I saw Christians renouncing their faith when it became costly. I saw families divided. I saw fear, overwhelming, paralyzing fear, gripping people who had always felt safe and secure. But then I saw the others, those few who remained in color, and they were different. They weren't panicking. They weren't falling apart. They were steady, strong, at peace, not because circumstances weren't affecting them, but because their peace didn't depend on circumstances. Their security wasn't in systems or governments or bank accounts. Their security was in Him. This is what I'm preparing, Jesus said, a people who can stand when everything else falls, a people who know me so intimately that when the world loses its mind, they don't lose their faith, a people who have already died to themselves, so they're not afraid of what death, physical or metaphorical, might take from them. The storm in the vision was fully formed now, and it was terrifying. The lightning was constant, the thunder deafening. The waves on the lake were massive, crashing against the shore with tremendous force. But in the midst of it all, those few people, those real disciples, were like rocks, immovable, unshakable. How do people become like that? I asked. How do they prepare? That's what I'm going to show you tomorrow night, he said. The practical steps, the daily choices, the heart transformation that has to happen between now and February. But Jonathan, he grabbed my arm, and the intensity in his grip matched the intensity in his eyes. You have to understand something. Most people won't do it. Most people will hear this message and feel momentarily convicted, maybe even scared, but then they'll go back to their comfortable patterns. They'll tell themselves they have time. They'll tell themselves it won't be that bad. They'll tell themselves they're fine as they are. And they're not? I asked, though I already knew the answer. They're not, he confirmed. They're building on sand and they don't even know it. And when February comes, when the storm hits, their houses are going to fall. And great will be the fall of them. He released my arm and stepped back. The storm in the water was beginning to subside, the images fading. The real wind around us was dying down too, though the cold remained intense. I'm showing you this not to create fear, he said, his voice gentler now. I'm showing you this to create urgency. Fear paralyzes, urgency mobilizes. I want my people mobilized. I want them awake. I want them preparing their hearts, not their bunkers. The sky was beginning to lighten in the east, that same transition from black to deep blue that I'd seen the morning before. The stars were fading. The mist was starting to glow with the approaching dawn. There's a difference, he continued, between the wise virgins and the foolish ones. Remember that parable? They all had lamps. They all looked the same externally. But when the bridegroom came, only half had oil. Only half were actually ready. The others thought they were ready. They assumed they were ready. But assumption isn't preparation. He walked to the water's edge, and I followed. We stood side by side, watching the light grow. I love my church, he said quietly. Even the parts that are asleep. Even the parts that are playing games. Even the parts that have substituted programs for presence and activity for intimacy. I love them. That's why I'm warning them. That's why I'm sending you to tell them, because I don't want anyone to be caught unprepared. But you said most won't listen, I pointed out. Most won't, he agreed. But some will. And for those some, this warning could be the difference between standing and falling, between real faith and false security, between knowing me and just knowing about me. The sun broke over the horizon, and just like the morning before, the transformation was stunning. The lake turned golden, the mist became luminous, the whole scene was breathtakingly beautiful. Every sunrise is a mercy, he said. Every new day is another chance to get it right. But the sunrises between now and February 2026 are numbered. The chances are finite. And most people are sleeping through them. He turned to me one more time. Tomorrow night, final night, I'll show you what to do, how to prepare, what the next 40 days need to look like for anyone who wants to be ready. Can you handle one more night? Yes, I said, though I wasn't sure it was true. These encounters were overwhelming, emotionally and spiritually exhausting. Good, he said. because what I show you tomorrow is the most important part. Everything until now has been diagnosis. Tomorrow is prescription. Tomorrow is hope. And then, just as before, he faded with the growing light, becoming translucent, then transparent, then gone. I stood there for a long time after he left, watching the sun climb higher, watching the lake return to its normal, everyday appearance. A few early morning joggers passed by on the trail behind me. A dog barked in the distance. The world was waking up, going about its business, completely unaware that Jesus had just been standing here, showing me visions of what's coming. I'm recording this now, later in the day, and I'm still processing everything I saw. Those images of churches, of people who look like Christians but aren't really following Christ, that hit hard. Because I saw myself in some of those images. I saw times when I've gone through the motions, times when I've performed worship instead of truly worshiping, times when I've let my faith be more about appearance than reality. And if I'm honest, that's what scares me most. Not the storm that's coming, not the chaos or the upheaval, but the possibility that I might be one of the ones who thinks they're ready but isn't, that I might be building on sand without realizing it. Listen, I know this is heavy. I know some of you are feeling overwhelmed right now, maybe even scared. But remember what he said. This isn't about creating fear. It's about creating urgency. There's still time. We still have weeks before February 2026, but we can't waste them. In the comments, I want you to be honest. Tell me, do you think your faith is real or just religious? If everything comfortable was stripped away tomorrow, would your relationship with Jesus be enough? Have you been playing church or actually following Christ? These are hard questions. But they're the questions February 2026 is going to answer, whether we want them answered or not. Tomorrow I'll share the final night, the practical steps, the path forward, the hope in the midst of the warning. But today I want you to sit with what I've shared. I want you to ask the Holy Spirit to show you the truth about your own heart, not to condemn you. He doesn't condemn those who are in Christ, but to reveal where you need to grow, where you need to change, where you need to move from performance to authenticity. Share this video, please. Not for my sake, but because someone in your life needs to hear this. Someone you know is asleep and needs to wake up. Someone is building on sand and needs to be warned before the storm comes. And pray. Pray for me as I prepare to share tomorrow's message. Pray for yourself. Pray for the church. Pray that we would have the courage to face the truth and the wisdom to respond rightly. One more night, one more encounter, and then you'll have everything you need to prepare. The question is, will you do it? I almost didn't go back. All day, on January 18th, after that second encounter, I wrestled with whether I could handle a third night. The first night had shaken me. The second night had devastated me. What I'd seen in those visions, the gap between appearance and reality in the church, the coming storm, the ratio of real disciples to pretenders, it had left me feeling raw and exposed. I spent the day in prayer, or trying to. Mostly I just sat in silence, feeling the weight of what I'd been shown. My wife finally asked me directly what was happening, and I told her everything. She listened without interrupting, and when I finished, she was quiet for a long moment. "You have to go back," she finally said. "If this is really Jesus, and I believe you that it is, then you have to see it through. People need to hear the whole message, not just the warning." She was right. I knew she was right. But I was afraid. Afraid of what else he might show me. Afraid of the responsibility of carrying this message. Afraid of being wrong. Afraid of being right. The comments on the second video were even more divided than the first. Some people were getting it, really getting it. They were sharing their own convictions, their own sense that the Spirit has been preparing them for something significant, but others were furious. Date-setting false prophet, they called me. Fear-mongering. Cult leader. One comment said, "You're going to have a lot to answer for when February 2026 comes and goes and nothing happens." Maybe they're right. Maybe I will. But I know what I've seen. I know who I've encountered. And tonight, I was about to see the rest. It was January 19th, 2026, at 2:47 a.m. when I arrived at the lakeside for the third time. But something was different immediately. The weather had changed dramatically. A storm system had moved in, not the supernatural storm from the vision, but a real physical storm. The wind was fierce, gusting hard enough to make my car rock as I pulled into the parking area. The temperature had risen to 42 degrees, but it felt colder because of the wind chill. Rain was coming down in sheets, not quite freezing, but close. I sat in my car for a moment, watching the rain hammer against the windshield, watching the trees bend and thrash in the wind. The lake was invisible in the darkness and the rain. This was crazy. I should go home. I should wait for better weather. But I knew he would be there. Storm or no storm, he would be there. I pulled my hood up and stepped out into the deluge. Within seconds, I was soaked. The rain was cold and relentless, driven sideways by the wind. I could barely see 5 feet in front of me. The path down to the shore was slick with mud and wet leaves. I slipped twice, catching myself on tree branches. When I finally reached the shore, the scene was apocalyptic. The lake was churning, waves crashing against the rocks with tremendous force. The wind was howling through the trees, a sound like 1,000 voices crying out. Lightning flashed in the distance, illuminating the scene in brief, stark moments of clarity. Thunder followed, deep and resonant, felt as much as heard. And there, standing at the water's edge, completely untouched by the rain, was Jesus. The rain fell around him, but not on him. The wind whipped everything else, but his robe hung still. He was looking out at the violent water, his back to me, and even from behind I could sense the intensity radiating from him. "Lord," I shouted over the storm, but my voice was torn away by the wind. He turned, and the look on his face stopped me in my tracks. It wasn't the sorrow I'd seen the previous nights. It was something fiercer. Righteous anger mixed with passionate love. The look of someone who was done with half measures and pretense. "Come here, Jonathan," he said, and though he didn't shout, I heard him perfectly clearly despite the storm. I stumbled forward, fighting against the wind, until I stood beside him. Up close I could see that while the rain didn't touch him, there were tears on his face. Whether from the previous nights or fresh ones, I couldn't tell. "This storm," he said, gesturing at the chaos around us, "is nothing compared to what's coming, but it's a picture, a shadow, a warning written in wind and water." Lightning struck somewhere close, close enough that I felt the electricity in the air, close enough that the thunder was instantaneous and deafening. I flinched, but he didn't move. "In February 2026, he said, his voice cutting through the noise, "the storm I've been holding back is going to be released. Not because I'm angry, though I am grieved by what my church has become. Not because I'm punishing, though there will be consequences for choices made, but because it's time. Time for the separation, time for the revealing, time for the refining." He raised his hand, and despite the violence of the real storm around us, the water in front of us suddenly calmed into that mirror-like surface again. The rain still fell everywhere else, but in a circle about 20 feet in diameter around us, everything was still. It was like standing in the eye of a hurricane. "Tonight," he said, "I'm going to show you 3 things. First, what happens to those who ignore the warning. Second, what happens to those who heed it. And third, what you need to tell them to do in the days between now and February." The water mirror began to show images again, but these were more vivid, more detailed, more real than anything I'd seen before. The first image was of a man I somehow knew was a pastor, though I'd never seen him before. He was in his office, comfortable, successful. His church was growing. His book was selling. His podcast was popular. He was preaching a message about God's blessing and favor, about claiming your victory, about living your best life now. "Watch," Jesus said quietly. The timeline moved forward. February 2026 came. The storm, whatever form it takes, hit. And this pastor fell apart. His faith, which had seemed so strong, evaporated like morning mist. He was angry at God, bitter. He walked away from ministry, from the church, from everything. In the vision, I could hear his thoughts. "I did everything right. I believed. I served. Where were you? Why didn't you protect me?" "He never knew me," Jesus said, and the pain in his voice was palpable. "He knew about me. He studied me academically. He preached about me professionally, but he never actually knew me. His faith was in the blessings, not the blesser. His trust was in the comfort I provided, not in me. So when the comfort was removed, there was nothing left." The image shifted to a woman, a worship leader. Same story, different details. She had built her identity on her gift, on the platform, on the affirmation she received. When the storm came and all of that was stripped away, she discovered she had nothing underneath. No real relationship, no genuine intimacy, just performance and emptiness. Then a businessman who had been a prominent church member, generous with his donations, respected in the community. When the economic aspect of the storm hit and his wealth evaporated, his faith went with it. He had been serving God with his excess, not his life. When there was no excess, there was no service. "Stop," I said, unable to watch anymore. "Please, I get it. People who aren't really rooted in you will fall when the storm comes. But show me the others. Show me the ones who stand. The images shifted and the contrast was stark. A single mother, struggling financially even before the storm. She had been meeting with Jesus every morning for years, not out of duty, but out of desperate need. When February 2026 came and everything got worse, she didn't fall apart. She had already learned to depend on him completely. The storm was terrible, but it wasn't new territory for her. She had been walking by faith, not by sight, for years. She knew his voice, she trusted his character, and she stood, an elderly couple who had lost everything twice before in their lives, once to war, once to disaster. They had learned long ago that everything in this world is temporary except Jesus. When the storm came, they were sad but not shaken. They had built their lives on the only foundation that can't be moved. A young man who had been radically saved out of addiction. His whole life was a testimony to God's transforming power. When the storm hit, he didn't question God's goodness because he had experienced it too deeply. He had been dead and was made alive. Whatever the storm took, it couldn't take that. Do you see the difference? Jesus asked me. They had already been through fire, I said. They had already learned to trust you when everything else failed. Yes, he said, but more than that, they knew me, not just knew about me. They had relationship, not just religion. They had intimacy, not just information, and that made all the difference. The storm around us was intensifying. The lightning was nearly constant now, turning night into day in rapid, strobing flashes. The thunder was continuous, a rolling roar that seemed to come from the earth itself. The trees were bending almost horizontal in the wind. But in our circle of calm, Jesus stood unmoved. The church has been teaching people to know about me, he said, and now the anger was clear in his voice. They teach my words, but not my ways. They teach my promises, but not my presence. They teach people to use me for blessing, for healing, for prosperity, for purpose, but not to know me. And you cannot stand on information when the storm comes. You can only stand on relationship. He turned to face me fully, and the intensity in his eyes was almost unbearable. This is what you need to tell them, Jonathan. This is the message for the days between now and February. They need to stop playing church and start pursuing me. They need to stop collecting Bible knowledge and start encountering the living word. They need to stop performing worship and start actually worshiping. They need to stop treating prayer like a religious duty and start treating it like the lifeline it is. But how? I asked desperately. How do they do that? What are the practical steps? The water mirror changed again, and now I saw something different. I saw a simple room, early morning, a person on their knees. No fancy prayers, no religious language, just honest, raw conversation with God. I saw someone reading scripture slowly, meditatively, asking the Holy Spirit to reveal truth rather than just racing through chapters to check a box. I saw someone sitting in silence, learning to recognize his voice. I saw someone choosing to forgive when everything in them wanted to hold a grudge. I saw someone giving sacrificially when it actually cost them something. I saw someone speaking truth when lying would have been easier. It's not complicated, Jesus said. It's just hard. Hard because it requires death. Death to self, death to comfort, death to control. Hard because it's daily. Hard because you can't fake it or perform it or pretend it. Either you're doing it or you're not. Either you're pursuing me or you're not. Either you know me or you don't. The images showed me more. I saw the difference between religious activity and genuine devotion. I saw someone who prayed for an hour but whose mind wandered the whole time versus someone who prayed for 10 minutes with complete focus and honesty. I saw someone who read 5 chapters of the Bible without retaining anything versus someone who meditated on 5 verses until they became alive. I saw someone who attended every church service but never applied anything versus someone who missed services sometimes but was actively living out what they'd learned. Quality over quantity, Jesus said. Heart over habit. Reality over ritual. This is what I'm looking for. This is what will stand when the storm comes. He walked closer to the water's edge, and I followed. The waves were massive now, crashing with such force that spray was reaching us even in our protected circle. February 2026, he said, is not the end of the world. Let me be clear about that. It's not the rapture, it's not the tribulation, it's not the second coming. But it is a threshold, it's a shaking, it's a revealing, and after it passes, the church will look very different. Smaller, probably, but stronger, purer, more real. What specifically happens? I asked. Can you tell me exactly what to expect? He looked at me with something like compassion. If I told you exactly, you would prepare for the specific events rather than preparing your heart. And it's the heart preparation that matters. The storm will take different forms in different places. Economic collapse here, political upheaval there, natural disaster somewhere else, persecution in another place. But the common thread will be this: everything that can be shaken will be shaken. Everything built on sand will fall. Everyone whose faith is in systems rather than in me will be exposed. The lightning struck again, so close that I could smell ozone. The thunder was immediate and overwhelming. And in that moment, in that flash of light, I saw something in the water that made my blood run cold. I saw churches, thousands of them, splitting apart. I saw families divided, parents against children, siblings against siblings, all over issues of faith and truth. I saw Christians turning on each other with a viciousness that seemed impossible. I saw fear driving people to do terrible things. I saw the love of many growing cold, just like Jesus predicted in Matthew 24. But then I saw the others, the remnant, the ones who stood firm, and they were like lights in the darkness. They were the ones feeding the hungry, sheltering the homeless, speaking truth with love, maintaining hope when everyone else despaired. They were the ones people turned to when everything else failed. They were the ones who looked like Jesus. "This is what I'm preparing," he said, gesturing at those lights in the darkness. "This is why the storm is necessary, not to destroy, but to refine, not to punish, but to purify, not to end the church, but to reveal what the church really is, not a building or an institution or a social club, but a people who know me and reflect me and stand firm no matter what." The vision faded, and we were back to just the storm and the water, and the two of us standing in that impossible circle of calm. "What do I tell them to do?" I asked. "Starting tomorrow, what's the practical application?" He smiled then, the first real smile I'd seen from him in 3 nights. "Tomorrow I'll give you the specific challenge, the daily practice, the 40-day preparation. But tonight I need you to understand the why before the what. I need you to understand that this isn't about surviving a storm. It's about becoming the kind of person who can stand in any storm because they're rooted in me." He placed both hands on my shoulders, and the warmth that flooded through me was even more intense than before. It was like liquid fire, burning away impurities, strengthening what remained. "You're going to face opposition," he said. "More than you already have. People are going to mock you. They're going to call you a false prophet. They're going to say you're fear-mongering or attention-seeking or deceived. And when February 2026 comes, if the storm doesn't look exactly like they expected, they're going to say you were wrong." "Was I wrong?" I asked, suddenly terrified. "Am I misunderstanding? You're not wrong," he interrupted firmly. "But you need to understand that prophecy is not about satisfying curiosity or proving yourself right. It's about preparing hearts. If even one person takes this seriously and uses these weeks to genuinely pursue me, to build their life on the rock instead of sand, then this message will have accomplished its purpose." The storm was beginning to subside slightly. The lightning was less frequent. The wind was still strong, but not as violent. The rain was easing from a deluge to a heavy downpour. "The sun will rise soon," he said, looking toward the eastern horizon. "And when it does, this phase of revelation will be complete. Tomorrow, later today actually, you'll share this third message. And then you'll give them the practical challenge, the 40 days of preparation, the daily practice that will transform them from pretenders to genuine disciples." 40 days, I said. "That takes us right up to February." "Exactly," he said. 40 days is biblical. Moses on the mountain, Elijah in the wilderness, my own time in the desert before ministry. 40 days is enough time to establish new patterns, to break old ones, to genuinely transform if someone is serious about it. He stepped back, and I could feel the separation like a physical loss. "But Jonathan," he said, his voice taking on a tone of final warning, "you need to tell them this. The 40 days only work if they're genuine. If they approach it like a religious checklist, like another Christian program to complete, it will accomplish nothing. This has to be about relationship, about really pursuing me, about honest, vulnerable, daily encounter. Anything less is just more performance, and performance won't stand when the storm comes." The sky was definitely lightening now. The storm was passing, moving off to the east. The rain was down to a drizzle. The wind was dying. And with the growing light, he was beginning to fade. Will I see you again? I asked, suddenly desperate. After tomorrow's message, will you come back? You'll see me every day if you look for me, he said, his voice growing distant. Not like this, perhaps, but I'm always present with those who seek me, always speaking to those who listen, always revealing myself to those who truly want to know me. The sun broke over the horizon, and the transformation was stunning. The storm clouds were breaking up, and shafts of golden light were piercing through, hitting the water, turning it from gray to silver to gold. A rainbow appeared, a full, vivid rainbow arcing across the entire sky. Remember, his voice came from everywhere and nowhere now. The rainbow is my promise, my covenant. I am faithful. I keep my word. The storm is coming, but so is the sunrise after. The shaking is real, but so is my steadfast love. Tell them to prepare, but also tell them to hope. Tell them to take this seriously, but also tell them that I am with them, always, even to the end of the age. And then he was gone. I stood there as the sun climbed higher, as the storm clouds dissipated, as the lake calmed and the world returned to normal. I was soaked to the bone, shivering, exhausted, but I was also filled with something I can only describe as holy determination. I have a message to deliver, a warning to sound, a challenge to issue, and only a few weeks to do it. The rainbow was still visible as I walked back to my car, and I took it as a sign. Yes, the storm is coming. Yes, it will be difficult. Yes, many will fall. But God is faithful. His promises are true. And those who build their lives on Him, really on Him, not just on religious activity, will stand. Tomorrow, I'll give you the practical challenge, the 40-day preparation, the specific daily practices that will transform your faith from theoretical to real, from performance to genuine relationship. But tonight, I need you to sit with what I've shared. I need you to ask yourself honestly, am I building on rock or sand? Do I know Jesus or just know about Him? Is my faith real or just religious? These are the questions that February 2026 will answer. But you don't have to wait until then to find out. You can answer them now. You can start building on rock today. In the comments, tell me, are you ready to commit to 40 days of genuine pursuit of Jesus? Not just religious activity, but real relationship? Are you willing to do whatever it takes to move from pretending to authentic discipleship? And share this message. Please. The time is short. The storm is coming. And people need to be warned while there's still time to prepare. One more message tomorrow. The practical application. The daily challenge. The path forward. And then it's up to you. The question is, will you take it seriously? I'm recording this on January 19th, 2026, just hours after that final encounter at the lakeside. I haven't slept. I can't sleep. My clothes are still damp from the storm, and I can still feel the weight of his hands on my shoulders, still hear his voice cutting through the thunder. Tell them to prepare. So that's what I'm doing, right now. No more delay. I went back to the lakeside this afternoon in the daylight. I needed to see it again, to confirm in my mind that it was real, that those 3 nights actually happened. The sun was shining, the water was calm and blue, families were walking the trail, a couple was fishing from the shore. Everything looked so normal, so peaceful, so ordinary. But I know what I saw there. I know who I met there. And standing on those same rocks where Jesus stood just hours before, looking out at that same water that showed me visions of what's coming, I felt the full weight of responsibility settle on me. This is the final message, the practical application, the 40-day challenge that could mean the difference between standing and falling when February 2026 arrives. But before I give you the specifics, I need to address something. Over the past 3 days, I've received thousands of comments. Many of you are taking this seriously, and I'm grateful, but many others are angry, dismissive, mocking, and I understand. I really do. If I were watching someone else claim to have met Jesus at a lakeside and received prophecies about February 2026, I'd be skeptical too. So let me say this clearly. I'm not asking you to believe me. I'm asking you to seek Jesus yourself. I'm asking you to take the challenge I'm about to give you and see what happens. Test it. Try it. Give it 40 days of genuine effort and let the results speak for themselves. Because here's the truth. Whether or not you believe my encounters were real, the challenge I'm about to give you is biblical. It's what Jesus has always called his followers to do. It's what the early church practiced. It's what every genuine disciple throughout history has discovered is necessary. So even if you think I'm crazy or deceived or lying, the worst that can happen if you take this challenge is that you'll grow closer to Jesus. And is that really a risk? Now let me give you what he told me to give you. The 40-day preparation. Jesus was clear. This is not a program. This is not a checklist. This is not another Christian challenge to complete so you can feel good about yourself. This is about genuine transformation. This is about moving from knowing about Jesus to actually knowing him. This is about building your life on rock instead of sand. He gave me 5 specific daily practices, 5 non-negotiables for the next 40 days, and he was adamant that all 5 are necessary. You can't pick and choose. You can't do 3 out of 5 and expect transformation. It's all or nothing. Practice 1. The hour of encounter, 5-9 or nagam. Every morning from 5 to 6 a.m., you meet with Jesus. Not to pray at him, not to recite memorized prayers, not to go through a devotional checklist, but to actually encounter him. Here's what that looks like. Minutes 110, silence and surrender. You sit in complete silence. No music, no Bible yet, no words. Just you and the awareness of his presence. You surrender the day before it starts. You surrender your plans, your agenda, your desires, your fears. You practice dying to yourself before the day has a chance to resurrect your ego. Jesus said this to me at the lakeside. Most people start their day by checking their phone, filling their mind with the world's agenda before they've even acknowledged mine. They wonder why they have no peace, no power, no presence. You cannot serve 2 masters, and whichever master you serve first in the morning usually gets your whole day. Minutes 11:25. Scripture meditation. Not Bible reading. Bible meditation. You take one passage, maybe just a few verses, maybe even just one verse, and you sit with it. You read it slowly. You ask the Holy Spirit to illuminate it. You let it speak to you personally, specifically today. Jesus told me, "My word is living and active," but most people treat it like a history book or a rule book. They read it with their intellect instead of their spirit. They analyze instead of absorb. They study instead of submit. I want them to let my word read them, to let it expose their hearts, challenge their thinking, transform their perspective. Minutes 26:45, honest conversation. This is prayer, but not religious prayer. This is talking to Jesus like he's actually there because he is. You tell him the truth about how you're feeling, what you're struggling with, what you're afraid of, what you're hoping for. No Christianese, no trying to sound spiritual, just raw, honest, vulnerable conversation. And then, this is crucial, you listen. You wait in silence for him to respond. Not audibly, necessarily, but that still, small voice, that impression, that sense of his heart toward you. You practice recognizing his voice. Jesus said, I'm always speaking, always, but most people are so busy talking at me that they never hear me talking to them. They treat prayer like a monologue when I designed it as a dialogue. They wonder why they don't hear my voice, but they never stop talking long enough to listen. Minutes 46 to 60. Worship and declaration. You end by worshiping him, not performing worship, not singing along to a song while your mind wanders, but genuine, focused adoration. You declare his character, his faithfulness, his goodness, not because everything in your life is perfect, but because he is perfect regardless of your circumstances. You declare truth over the lies you're tempted to believe. You speak life over the death the enemy is trying to bring. You align your perspective with heaven's perspective. This hour is non-negotiable. Jesus was emphatic about this. If they can't give me 1 hour, he said, then they're not serious. I'm not asking for their whole day, though I deserve it. I'm asking for 1 hour. If they won't give me that, then they're telling me I'm not their priority no matter what they claim with their lips. I know what you're thinking. I'm not a morning person. I have kids. I work night shifts. I can't function at 5 a.m. Jesus addressed this directly. He said, they'll make time for what they value. They'll wake up early for a flight, for a job, for a sale at the store. But for me, suddenly it's impossible. This is the test. This is where they discover whether they're serious or just playing games. If 5 a.m. is genuinely impossible due to your work schedule, then adjust it. But it needs to be early, before the day's demands crowd in, and it needs to be consistent, same time every day. Your body and spirit need the rhythm. Practice 2. The fast from noise, all day. For the next 40 days, you fast from unnecessary noise and distraction. Specifically, no social media except for work-related necessity, and be honest about what's actually necessary. No mindless scrolling or entertainment consumption. No news except for 1 brief check per day, 15 minutes maximum. No background TV or music. Only intentional, purposeful media consumption. No filling every silent moment with podcasts or videos. Jesus said, the enemy's greatest weapon in this generation is distraction. He doesn't need to make people evil. He just needs to keep them distracted. Distracted people don't pray. Distracted people don't hear my voice. Distracted people don't notice what I'm doing or what he's doing. They're too busy scrolling, watching, consuming, numbing. This fast is about creating space. Space for God to speak, space for you to think, space for the Holy Spirit to convict, correct, and guide. They're addicted to noise, Jesus told me, because silence forces them to face themselves, and they don't like what they see, so they fill every moment with distraction. But transformation requires reflection, and reflection requires silence. I know this one is going to be hard. It's hard for me too. We're all addicted to our phones, to the constant stream of information and entertainment, but that's exactly why this fast is necessary. Practice 3. The discipline of obedience. Immediate response. Every time the Holy Spirit prompts you to do something, and He will multiple times per day, you obey immediately. Not later, not when it's convenient, immediately. Prompted to encourage someone, do it right then. Prompted to forgive, do it immediately. Prompted to give before you can talk yourself out of it. Prompted to apologize before pride can stop you. Prompted to speak truth, speak it before fear can silence you. Jesus said, delayed obedience is disobedience. My people have become experts at negotiating with me. I tell them to do something, and they say, yes, Lord, I'll do that. Later, when it's more convenient, when I'm more prepared, when it costs less. But that's not obedience. That's just agreement without action, and agreement without action is worthless. This practice will be uncomfortable. The Holy Spirit will prompt you to do things that feel awkward, costly, or scary. That's the point. This is about training yourself to trust His voice more than your comfort. Keep a journal. Write down every prompting you're aware of and whether you obeyed or not. At the end of each day, review it honestly. This will reveal patterns, areas where you consistently obey, and areas where you consistently resist. Practice 4, the crucifixion of comfort, daily sacrifice. Every single day, you do something that costs you, something that requires genuine sacrifice, something that crucifies your flesh. This could be giving money when it actually impacts your budget, serving someone when you'd rather rest, speaking truth when lying would be easier, forgiving when you'd rather hold a grudge, fasting from something you enjoy, doing the hard thing you've been avoiding. The specific action will vary day to day, but the principle is constant: daily death to self. Jesus was blunt about this one. They want resurrection without crucifixion. They want the crown without the cross. They want to follow me without denying themselves. But I was clear. If anyone would come after me, let him deny himself, take up his cross daily, and follow me. Daily. Not once. Not when they feel like it. Daily. He continued. The problem with the modern church is that they've made following me comfortable. They've removed the cost. They've eliminated the sacrifice. And in doing so, they've created a false gospel that produces false converts who have false security. When the storm comes, they'll discover they never actually died to themselves, so they were never actually alive in me. This practice is about proving to yourself, not to God, that your faith is real, that you're willing to pay the cost, that following Jesus is more important than your comfort. Practice 5. The community of accountability, weekly gathering. You cannot do this alone. You need at least one other person, ideally a small group of 3 to 5, who is taking this 40-day challenge seriously. You meet with them once per week, in person if possible, and you're brutally honest about how it's going, not surface-level sharing, not pretending you're doing better than you are. Real, vulnerable, honest accountability. You confess where you failed, you celebrate where you succeeded, you pray for each other, you encourage each other, you challenge each other, you don't let each other quit. Jesus said, I sent them out 2 by 2 for a reason. The enemy isolates before he destroys. He convinces people they're the only one struggling, the only one failing, the only one who can't get it right. But when they're in genuine community, not just attending church, but actually doing life together, they discover they're not alone. And that makes all the difference. If you don't have anyone to do this with, ask God to provide someone. Post in the comments that you're looking for an accountability partner. Join the community forming around this message. But don't try to do this alone. You'll fail. We all need each other. The deadline. Today is January 19th, 2026. 40 days from today is February 28th, 2026. That's your deadline. That's when this preparation period ends and whatever is coming in February fully arrives. Jesus was specific about this timeline. He said, I'm giving them 40 days of warning, 40 days of preparation, 40 days of grace. After that, the shaking begins in earnest. Those who use the 40 days well will stand. Those who wasted them will fall. I need you to understand something. I don't know exactly what form the shaking will take. I don't know if it will be primarily economic, political, natural, spiritual, or some combination. Jesus didn't give me those specifics, and I think that's intentional, because if I told you exactly what to expect, you'd prepare for the event instead of preparing your heart. And it's the heart preparation that matters. The storm might look different than you expect. It might be more subtle or more dramatic. It might hit your area hard or barely touch you physically, but the spiritual reality will be the same. Everything built on sand will fall, and everything built on rock will stand. The warning. I need to be honest with you about something Jesus said on that final night at the lakeside. He told me, most people who hear this message won't do it. They'll feel convicted for a day or two. They might even start the challenge. But within a week, most will quit. Within 2 weeks, almost all will be back to their normal patterns. They'll tell themselves they'll start again tomorrow, next week, next month, but they won't. And when February comes, they'll discover that good intentions don't build foundations. Don't be that person. Don't be someone who hears the warning and ignores it. Don't be someone who starts strong and quits when it gets hard. Don't be someone who treats this like just another Christian challenge. This is different. The stakes are different. The timeline is different. The urgency is different. Jesus said something at the lakeside that I haven't been able to stop thinking about. He said, in the parable of the 10 virgins, 5 were wise and 5 were foolish. They all had lamps. They all looked the same externally. They all claimed to be waiting for the bridegroom, but when he came, only half were actually ready. The others thought they were ready. They assumed they were ready, but assumption isn't preparation. He looked at me with such intensity and said, tell them, don't assume you're ready. Don't assume your Sunday church attendance and your Bible knowledge and your Christian vocabulary mean you're prepared. Test it. Prove it. These 40 days are your chance to discover whether your faith is real or just religious. Don't waste them. The hope. But here's the good news, and there is good news in this message. If you take this seriously, if you genuinely commit to these 40 days, you will be transformed, not because the practices are magical, but because they position you to encounter Jesus, and encountering Jesus always transforms. You'll discover that he's more real than you thought. You'll hear his voice more clearly than you ever have. You'll experience his presence more tangibly. You'll find strength you didn't know you had. You'll develop faith that can withstand any storm. And when February comes, when the shaking starts, you won't panic, you won't fall apart, you won't lose your faith, because your faith won't be in circumstances or systems or comfort. Your faith will be in him, and he cannot be shaken. Jesus told me, I'm not doing this to destroy my church. I'm doing this to refine it. I'm not bringing the storm to punish my people. I'm allowing it to reveal who my people really are. And after it passes, what remains will be beautiful, smaller perhaps, but beautiful, real, genuine. A church that actually looks like me. That's the hope. That's what's on the other side of the shaking. A church that's real, a people who genuinely know Jesus, a community that reflects his character instead of just using his name. And you can be part of that. You can be one of the ones who stands, one of the lights in the darkness, one of the rocks that doesn't move when everything else is falling apart. But only if you prepare, only if you take these 40 days seriously. The call to action. So here's what I need you to do right now. First, make the decision. Are you in or out? Are you going to take this 40-day challenge seriously, or are you going to scroll past and forget about it by tomorrow? Decide right now. Second, if you're in, comment below with these exact words. I commit to the 40 days. Don't just think it, write it. Public commitment increases accountability. Third, find your accountability partner or group. Look through the comments for others who are committing. Reach out, connect, form your group this week. Fourth, prepare practically. Set your alarm for 4:50 a.m. starting tomorrow. Delete social media apps from your phone or use app blockers. Get a journal for tracking your obedience. Clear your schedule for that weekly accountability meeting. Fifth, start tomorrow, January 20th, 2026. Don't wait for Monday or the first of the month or when you feel more ready. Start tomorrow, 5 a.m., 1 hour with Jesus, and then the rest of the practices throughout the day. Sixth, share this message. I'm not asking you to share it for my benefit or for views. I'm asking you to share it because someone in your life needs to hear this. Someone you know is building on sand and doesn't realize it. Someone needs the warning while there's still time to prepare. Tag them, send them the link, have the awkward conversation. 7th, don't quit. When it gets hard, and it will get hard, don't quit. When you fail, and you will fail some days, don't quit. Get back up, start again, keep going. The enemy will tell you it's too hard, you're not cut out for this, you've already blown it, so why continue? Don't listen to him, keep going. My personal commitment. I want you to know that I'm doing this with you. I'm not just giving you a challenge and walking away. Starting tomorrow, January 20th, I'm committing to these same 40 days. I'll be posting updates throughout, not to show off, but to encourage you and to be accountable myself. I'll share what I'm learning in that morning hour. I'll be honest about where I'm struggling. I'll celebrate the victories and confess the failures. We're in this together. Because here's the truth. I need this as much as you do. Maybe more. Those 3 nights at the lakeside showed me how much of my faith has been performance, how much has been about the role I play rather than the relationship I have. I've been portraying Jesus for years, but he's calling me to know him more deeply, more genuinely, more intimately, and that's what these 40 days are about for all of us. The final word, I went back to the lakeside one more time this evening, just before sunset. I stood on those same rocks where Jesus stood, where he showed me visions of what's coming, where he gave me this message to share with you. The water was calm, golden light was reflecting off the surface, a light breeze was blowing, carrying the scent of pine. Everything was peaceful, beautiful, serene, and I thought about how deceptive appearances can be, how the calm surface can hide the storm that's building underneath, how everything can look fine right up until the moment it isn't. But I also thought about the sunrise I witnessed after that final storm, the rainbow that appeared, the promise that God is faithful, that he keeps his word, that he's with us even in the shaking. And I felt him speak to my heart one more time, not audibly, not visibly, but clearly, unmistakably. He said, "Tell them I love them. Tell them this warning is an act of love, not judgment. Tell them I'm giving them time to prepare because I don't want anyone to fall. Tell them to take me seriously. And tell them that no matter what comes, I am with them. Always. Even to the end of the age." So that's what I'm telling you. He loves you. This warning is love. You have time to prepare. Take it seriously. And he is with you. 40 days. That's all I'm asking. 40 days of genuine pursuit of Jesus. 40 days of building on rock instead of sand. 40 days that could change everything. February 2026 is coming whether you're ready or not. The question is, will you be one of the ones who stands? The sun has set now, the lakeside is dark, but I know that tomorrow morning the sun will rise again. It always does. God is faithful. His mercies are new every morning, and tomorrow morning at 5 a.m. I'll be meeting with him. Will you? Comment below. Commit to the 40 days, find your accountability group, and let's do this together. The storm is coming, but so is the sunrise after. Let's be ready for both. Drop your comments below. I commit to the 40 days. If you're taking this challenge seriously, your prayer requests for the journey ahead. Looking for accountability partner. If you need to connect with others, share which of the 5 practices will be hardest for you. Tag someone who needs to hear this message. Subscribe and turn on notifications for daily updates throughout the 40-day journey. Share this complete series with everyone you know. Time is short. The warning needs to be heard. February 28th, 2026. That's the deadline. That's when we'll know who built on rock and who built on sand. Don't waste these 40 days. Your eternity might depend on it.